Okay, guys, so today we worked on rates still. We continued with rates. Um, and this was our entry task. Jessica rode her bike 128 miles in 8 weeks. How many miles did she ride her bike each week? Okay, so we want to find out how many miles she rode her bike each week. So each week is a week, right? Each week or a week, right? And we have this ratio here. I know that I'm going to do for each week or a week, right? Or per week. I'm going to make it for 1 week. Okay. Now, I know that to solve how many miles she did, right? I don't know how many. I set up a proportion. And I'm going to use the given ratio of 128 miles in 8 weeks, right? And this is a rate, right? 128 miles in 8 weeks is a rate, right? Because it is a ratio that has two different units of measurement. We have miles, that's distance or length, right? Distance. And we have week, and that's time, right? So those units of measurement, because there's two of them, it's a rate. Two units of measurement are being compared. Okay, so now we want to find out how many miles are in 1 week. And we learned how to do this by cross multiplying originally, right? Making 8x equal 128, right? And then we divided both sides by 8. Now, if you look at dividing both sides by 8, that looks very similar or exactly like 128 over 8. And it is, right? So we can actually skip these steps when we have a 1 in the denominator for our unit rate, right? We're talking about unit rates. And our last class, we actually talked about how a unit rate is a rate with a 1 in the denominator. It's per or for 1 of something, right? So if we have a 1 in the denominator of our proportion, right, then we can just divide this numerator by the denominator, right? Or we could divide both the numerator and the denominator by the denominator of 8. But then we get 8 divided by 8 equals 1. So just to shorten it, I would say that you can just divide 128, the numerator, right, by the denominator, by 8. Okay. So let's see what that equals. 128 divided by 8. And I know I gave you guys calculators in school, but I'm going to do it with long division right here just to practice it. 8 goes into 12, right? Well, 8 doesn't go into 1. So we move over and 8 goes into 12 one time, right? 12 minus 8 is 4. Bring down the 8. So 8 goes into 48. 8 goes into 48 6 times. Minus 48. Right? Because we do 8 times 6, and that's 48. Whoops. Is that neat enough? Can you see that? Let me just make it nicer. And I'm actually going to change my color to white for a second. So minus 48. And all right, so our answer is 16 miles. 16 miles in 1 week. Okay, and that's a 0. There. Oopsie. All right. Sorry about that. So I want to take a look at our I.O. And our I.O. today was students will be able to represent rates on a table by using multiplication and division. So rates, right? Those are ratios that are comparing two different units of measurement. A table, well, we've seen that before. It looks like this and it has information on it, right? That's showing equivalent ratios. We talked about that when we were doing ratios on a table. Now we're going to do rates on a table, right? So we're going to represent rates on a table, and we're going to do this by using multiplication and division. Right? So we have a table here, and the table below shows the distance the Myrtle Express train travels at various times. It travels at a constant speed, right? So the rate is constant. We want to use this table to solve it. We're going to have to find the unit rate. And we do that by taking a look, right? We do that first. We're going to set up a proportion. And we're going to set one of our things, right? We want to know how many miles per hour. So we're going to set one of our proportions to 1 hour, and we don't know how many miles that's going to be. And our other proportion, we're going to use information from the table, and we have information here and here. And it doesn't matter which one you use, right? Because they're equivalent ratios, but I want to use the smallest one because that's going to be easier to work with. Right? So we have 100 miles in 2 hours. Now, I know if there's a 1 in the denominator, I just have to divide this numerator by the denominator on the other side, right? And so 100 divided by 2, right, is 50. So 50 miles every 1 hour. Now, if we look at this table, we could take this 2 and multiply it times 50 to get 100. So that's going to be our rule for the table when we're working with rates. So 3 times 50 gives us 150. 3.5 times 50 gives us 175 miles, right? For 3 hours and a half. Okay, now for 4 hours, we have 200 miles. So we use the unit rate to complete the table. And now we want to write our equivalent ratios. And remember how we talked about on the table, we have equivalent ratios. So 100 over 2 is equivalent to 150 over 3, and that is equivalent to 175 over 3.5. Let me fix that. And 200 over 4. And remember, you can check equivalent ratios by cross multiplying. So 2 times 150 is 300. 3 times 100 is 300. Are they equivalent? Are these equal? Yes. 300 is equal to 300. Oops. It closed on me. Okay, let me come back to it. Let me reopen it up. All right, we're all good. All right, let's go to the next one. We have another table, right? So this table shows the amount of water used for various amounts of time in the shower. Okay, so we want to take our information that our table has gallons for hours, right? Per hours, right? And we want to find the unit rate of gallons of water per hour. So we know we want 1 hour on the bottom because it's per hour, right? For every 1 hour. And we don't know what's going to be on top. We don't know how many gallons that's going to be. So we're going to use our table to start, right? And we know our table has equivalent ratios. So we're going to find our information that has a ratio given for us. So that is 60 gallons over 3 hours. Now, there's a couple ways you could do this. You can see that, from 3 to 1 is divided by 3. And you could divide both the denominator and the numerator by 3, right? Because whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. But you could also notice with a unit rate, you could leave the 1 on the bottom there and then just divide the 60 by 3 to get your numerator. You just divide the other side, the fraction on the other side. So 60 divided by 3 is 20. Okay, so it's 20 gallons for every hour. And our rule is going to be, we're going to use our unit rate, right, and multiply our unit rate by 1 over here. And then over here, right, because we have every 1 hour is 20 gallons. We want to find out how many hours was for 40 gallons. There's so many ways you can do that, right? Some of you might see what times 20 equals 40, right? Or you could even set up, right? We know that 1 hour is 20 gallons and we have 40 gallons. How many hours is it going to be? You can cross multiply, getting 20x equals 40. And then you know to divide by 20 to get x. And x equals 2, right? 40 divided by 20 is 2. Or you could also see 20 times 2 is 40. And so we multiply times 2 on the bottom. Right? So 2, and we see that. We can see 2 times 20 equals 40. 3 times 20 equals 60. Right? What times 20 equals 80? Again, I love setting up just the proportions. It's so much easy to see. We have 1 over 20. 20 over 1, 20 gallons for 1 hour. And we have 80 gallons. And how many hours is that going to be? Well, for 20 to go to 80, we times it by 4. 20 times 4 is 80, right? So then we are going to also multiply our denominator by 4 to find out what this missing value is. And it's going to be 4. And that is true. 4 times 20 equals 80. Now, just like before, we are going to just list our equivalent ratios. This is one ratio, 20 over 1. This is another ratio, 40 over 2. We have 60 over 3 and 80 over 4. Okay, so that is our first lesson we did today, because a lot of us had, we were together 2 periods. So the first thing we did today is we just expressed rates on a table, right, using our unit rate. And I'm going to post this with a worksheet, and then we are going to work on, right, unit rates in price. Okay, so it will also be the same IO pretty much, because you will still be working on representing rates on a table by using multiplication and division, but it's going to be with pricing. All right, guys, I will see you soon.